Good evening and welcome to this evening's show. As usual, I'll start with a few bits of news, etc., before we introduce this evening's special guest. In a couple of weeks' time, we've got Dr. Paul Gilfillan, who's a sociologist at a university in Edinburgh, so we'll look forward to hearing from him. Next week, it's not quite fixed yet, but we might well have a discussion, might not include me, maybe another couple of people talking about so-called conversion therapy to do with LGBT issues. That will be very interesting, very controversial, possibly. I was looking at the live streams on our YouTube channel the other day, and I noticed on every single one, I'd worn the same tie. I just keep it in my pocket in my study. So I thought we need to have a change here. So I've gone for that. Now, we had the flag at the introduction as well. So I hope you like that. That's the first time that's had an airing. Other news, we've been inviting people to apply to be candidates for the Scottish Family Party in next year's election. We've had a lot of people in touch. It's been really good. I would say we've got a lot of people in the Central Belt. We're a bit thinner in the north and the south of Scotland, Highlands and Islands and south of Scotland. But generally, we've got to say a lot of people coming forward. But if you're interested in that, do drop us an email at admin@scottishfamily.org, admin@scottishfamily.org. To be a candidate, obviously, you need to be a member of the party. But whether you want to be a candidate or not, we would encourage you to join the Scottish Family Party via our website, minimum of just £4 a month. And some other news coming up this week is we're just on the verge of passing 10,000 Facebook followers. Likes will take a few more weeks, but followers, we're on 9,990 just before we went live. That'll be the first time we've had something in a five-figure number of people. So that's something we can look forward to. So give our Facebook page a few shares, and let's see if we can get over that. Maybe even by the end of the show, we might be over 10,000 Facebook followers. If we get over it during the course of the show, someone put a comment on and let us know. Do share this link as well, so other people will be able to join in and watch. I spent most of today working on a video about developments on the hate speech bill. Hamza Yousaf appeared before a committee in the Parliament, and the different MSPs, people from various organisations, were talking about it. Some great material, I mean, some quite remarkable conversations going on in the Parliament. So that video will come out within the next couple of days. Now, we had a slight hitch with our special guest tonight, and that he messaged me about 6:30 and said, let's just clarify what we're going to talk about on the live stream. So we were just talking about topics. Then I said to him, I'll send you the link at 7:30. If you could come on, we could just have a chat. And then he said, oh, is it tonight? So we had a little confusion there, but fear not, we've got an even special guest lined up instead at the last minute, our very own Phil Tanzer, who needs no introduction. And we are. So welcome to Phil. Saying you're on mute at the moment. Is that from your end?
Yes, that was on my end.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for having me on the show again.
Always a pleasure. Now, so last minute, what we were going to talk about, we had a few ideas. But I thought what might be interesting would be to have a look at the political compass. Earlier on today, I did this thing. You've probably heard of it. It's an online thing where you answer a questionnaire. Then it places you on a political grid, right, left, libertarian, authoritarian. So I ended up pretty close to the center, which I was slightly surprised. It actually showed me slightly left of center. So I was quite surprised about it. But anyway, that's what it said. So I thought what we could do, we could go through the questionnaire. But if you wanted to, you could get it up on your computer now at home. Those of you watching, you could go through it yourself as well. You can fill it in yourself and see what you end up with. But we're going to go through the questions and talk through them. We might not get to the end because there's quite a lot of questions.
Richard,
but I thought that would be a good, yeah.
I did it approximately half a year ago, and I was similar to you. I was almost a bit disappointed that I ended up quite a bit left-leaning, and I was like, no, I want to be more conservative. But yeah, by the way, there is another test that you should look at, and it's about your values, where your values match up with conservative values, and I enjoyed that one much more, and I had to do it twice, the other one, because first I filled it out how I would fill it out for somebody else, and then I filled it, and I was surprised because it came out wrong, and I was like, oh, I actually wasn't honest. I didn't answer what I feel. Let's say I was a bit softer than I actually feel, and then I filled it out the way I felt, and I was quite libertarian, conservative libertarian, and I was like, yeah, that's more me.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Some of the questions. Well, we can talk about the questions as we go along.
Yeah,
let's kick off. So do chip in with comments. We'll try and bring more comments onto the screen this week. So, question 1: if economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations. Strongly agree, disagree, agree, strongly agree. There's no middle option in these. You have to go one way or the other.
So it should, please read it again.
If economic globalization is inevitable, it should primarily serve humanity rather than the interests of transnational corporations.
I slightly agree. No, I strongly agree. I agree.
It's the sort of question where how could anyone disagree? How is anyone really going to say, oh no, stuff humanity, it's the big global corporations that really matter?
Sure, but on the other hand, you need the big corporations for income tax and stuff like that. And sometimes the big corporations are actually necessary for the greater good as well. So it's
but the way the question's worded, I mean, it's an easy one. It's an easy one. Right. Number 2, I'd always support my country, whether it was right or wrong. Always support my country, whether it was right or wrong.
I slightly or strongly disagree. I would say it depends on what it is, but between slightly and strongly disagree.
I would have maybe wanted to go for something in the middle, because I would say even if I think my country is wrong, I still support it. It's still my country, if you like. It could be like a family member. Like if a family member commits some terrible crime and ends up in prison, do you still support them? Well, yes, you do. They're still your relative. Whatever. Sorry, go on.
I would support them, but I would potentially even still support them, but I would potentially even put them in prison if they did something wrong. And I said, you have to be honest. You have to. So again, it's difficult. I would stand for my fellow countrymen, I think. But if my country would break human rights laws and stuff like that, I would say, sorry, I'm not signing up for that.
Yeah.
Even as a soldier, I would probably say, I'm putting down my weapon.
Yeah. So I would say I challenge my own country, absolutely. But on the other hand, alongside that is a longer term loyalty. So I challenge it in order to improve it and still be loyal to it through the process would be the ideal, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it. No one chooses their country of birth, so it's foolish to be proud of it.
In the past, I would have agreed with that, but now I strongly disagree. But to me, there is a difference between being proud and pride. To me, pride is something not very good, but being proud of what your country has accomplished while still acknowledging the negative aspects of its history or being critical, I think is a very important thing. If you're not proud of where you are and where you're from, then you're nothing.
Yeah. Well, I thought for that one, it's I strongly disagree. I think the sense of pride in your nation, it leads to good things. It leads to loyalty. That's what binds people together. Helps people to make sacrifices for each other. I mean, that's what a community is. That's a really important aspect of creating a healthy society. So I'd strongly disagree there.
But as a German, I had to learn that pride in your country is valid and is something positive. As a German from birth, people tell us that we're not allowed to be proud of our country. So.
Okay. Right. Next one. Our race has many superior qualities compared with other races. I'll go first on this one. So I thought with that one, I mean, obviously, surely there's hardly anyone who's going to say, oh, yes, that's That's that.
I would
Sorry,
say
go on.
I not strongly, but I slightly agree. But other races have a lot of advantages compared to us. So, for example, sorry, but you will find most high-ranking runners are black. And so different races are a little bit better in different areas, and I think that's actually something positive. I think that adds to diversity, but I would never say that one race is overall better than another race.
Yeah.
But
yeah, the way I would see it, I mean, it's inevitable that races have got differences in some ways that are uncontroversial. So to suggest there's no differences in others, I think is ridiculous. It could be a really interesting area to find out lots about. But on the other hand, I don't want to do it because people will use it in ways I wouldn't want to be used. So it's something I'm happy to just completely leave alone. I don't want to particularly talk about. So
I would like to have this conversation in a room with people from different racial backgrounds. So people that I respect, where you can say, oh, I think you guys are better in this, and they can say, I think you guys are better at this. So it just an appreciation of what different cultures and different races are good at and not so good at.
The problem is it would just be too charged, and people would want to use whatever results come out of it in unsavory ways. So, like I say, I agree. I think it would be really interesting to find more out, but I don't particularly want to, because I think at the moment, particularly at the moment with the race obsession, it's best just leave it alone. The next one. Okay, how about that one? Let's bring a comment or two. If we change race for culture.
All right, yeah.
Our culture has many superior qualities compared with other cultures.
I find that harder. I find that question harder than the race question, to be honest, because I do see beauty in different aspects of different cultures, even cultures that are quote unquote primitive. There is some purity about it that we might have lost, but we are better in technical things. Difficult. I think that can't be answered with agrees, disagree. That's a whole night debate, maybe a whole life debate.
I would say if it means culture in terms of art and music, that sort of side of culture, I would still say you could make a case. Someone could argue rationally for one culture being superior to another. If it talks about the whole way of structuring a society and the traditions and ethos of a society, then I think definitely there are better and less good systems of that. And if that's what they mean by culture, then I'd say there are inferior and superior cultures in that regard.
I think first I would have to agree with other people on a scale and say, okay, how do we rate it? Do we people or life expectancy, child mortality? These are all things that could be taken into account. But when you look at mental health, so in some cultures, for example, people die much younger, but they have far less mental health problems. And how do you rate that? It's very difficult.
Yeah. How about that one? Russian under Stalin, proud of their country. I think I would say, I would hope a Russia in that circumstance would realize how bad things were. But what Russia really needs in that situation is people are going to be loyal to Russia and committed to reforming it and to solving the problems and moving on to with a better vision of the future. Do you say something similar there?
I would completely agree. At the moment, I want the Scottish people to stand up against the tyranny that we're experiencing at the moment. So I'm disappointed in Scotland, to be honest. And I know that's a bit tricky saying that as a German, but I'm disappointed in Scotland because I want people to stand up and say, we don't like these draconian lockdown rules. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah, the thing about cultures is interesting. I think through the history of civilizations, and that was quite often the times civilizations have made big steps forward is when they've basically copied other systems. And that's been quite a significant thing for them. So I think basically the sort of Western civilization model of nation states and the sort of economic model, institutional model, has been very effective in bringing development to all parts of the world, to be hugely effective in that regard. So yeah, quite agree with that one. Right, let's carry on. Next question. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Strongly disagree.
Strongly disagree. Yeah, I think I would go like that as well. The co-belligerents, that's what they call them sometimes, don't they? Someone who's on your side in that battle, who's not necessarily your friend. Yeah, I don't think there's a huge amount to talk about on that one. Let's move to the next one. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified. Military action that defies international law is sometimes justified.
Slightly agree.
Yeah, I think the idea of international law, people talk about it, there's like the law of a nation. But international law is not on that sort of firm foundation. And the institutions that create it or interpret it are definitely fallible as well. So, yeah, I would be open to discussion that one.
There are situations where I'm happy that I don't know what's going on behind certain closed doors, or in other countries where I'm like, maybe certain things need to be done, but I don't want to know about it. I know it sounds very cowardish, but it's very difficult to understand how things work in other countries. And for example, when people talk about torture, I'm absolutely against torture. But might there be situations where you have to torture somebody to get an information on something? I don't want to be in that situation. I wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to torture.
There's a story about that from Germany. In fact, I don't know if you're familiar with this. This is a true story. This is from memory, so there might be details all over the place, but this is the gist of the story. I think a 10-year-old boy or whatever had been kidnapped by someone, some sort of abuser, and the police arrested the man who had kidnapped the boy. They were certain they'd got the right man, and they thought that the man had taken the boy to a secret location and had him tied up there. That they had reason to believe that was likely to be the case. So they said to the man when they arrested him, right, where's the boy? And the man said, I'm not telling you. So the police did everything they could think of, but the man would not tell them. And the police were thinking, right, this boy might well be starving to death or dying of thirst or whatever as we speak. So basically, what are we going to do about it? So the police decided locally that what they did, they said to this man, right, we've called for the specialist in this type of interrogation. And what he does is he comes along and he inflicts pain on the person being interrogated in order to get them to speak. And they said, he's arriving in an hour's time. So, we'll come back in an hour, whatever. And that was enough to get him talking. Wow. And in fact, I think the boy wasn't alive after all. So then after them, that went to court in Germany. And I think, if I remember rightly, the court found them guilty of doing that, because they shouldn't have done that. But then they were given no sentence or a trivial sentence for it, which I thought to me sounded fair enough. So if someone said, are you in favor of torture? Absolutely not. Then you hear a story like that. I mean, if that was your child in that situation, well, who would argue against the policeman? There's two sides to it. Anyways, that was interesting. Right, what's next?
I think people that claim that there are no situations where your morals would be tested to their limits, they'd be foolish.
Yeah.
There will always, there could always be situations where you're like, I don't know what's right here. So
yeah, but there's a general idea that that whatever moral principle you've got, if you put enough on the other side of the scales, like someone said, if you don't do this thing, then we do this terrible thing to thousands of people, and you genuinely believe it's going to happen, then you have got a genuine moral dilemma. But I find in the normal run of things, those situations just don't arise. They talk about them in philosophy lectures, and maybe 1 in a million people actually faces one, but it's very rare. Anyway, the next one. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment. There is now a worrying fusion of information and entertainment.
Strongly agree.
Yeah. What have you got in mind for that?
Yeah, I would say I stopped watching TV. I don't even have TV stations anymore because of that. There's just I think almost all media at the moment is based on indoctrination of all sorts, and I try to avoid that now. And you?
Through coronavirus in particular, with the mainstream media, as it's called, I mean, its bias is so blatant and frustrating and annoying that I really don't want to watch it, apart from just to check up how bad it is.
I posted something on Facebook today. I wrote, COVID is predominantly not spread through the air. It's predominantly spread by the media.
But then I think the alternative media, I felt particularly through coronavirus, that's got its own problems as well.
Yeah.
Because you've got people there who are similarly chasing ratings. And I think with coronavirus, I think the more extreme the view gets, the more interesting and engaging and entertaining it becomes. So I think it's really fueling a polarization as well. So the alternative media, I think, is not like the panacea that creates people who have got the balanced view of things. I think that there's an equal danger going there as well. But I think it is.
And I think that's gonna increase dramatically over the next year. I started 2 days ago. I started purging my friend list on Facebook because I noticed that I can't communicate with liberal people anymore, which is very sad. But I'm like, it makes me angry, and I engage in not productive conversation because there are just two completely different worldviews. So I had to stop communicating with people on the left side, with some exceptions. I have some people on the far left that are very engaged in good conversations, and obviously I would never block them because it's productive.
I mean, the solution, I don't know, I suppose in the olden days, when the BBC was, before I can remember really, I was assuming at some point in the past, the BBC, which acts as an anchor for the rest of the media, was reasonably impartial, then people would be sharing in the common media, but then taking different opinions from it. You'd hear different opinions through it. In a sense, that's an ideal. But how do you get back to that? It's really difficult to see from where we are. So, right, moving on. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment. Controlling inflation is more important than controlling unemployment.
Ooh. I think I agree. I slightly agree, yeah.
Yeah, I felt with this one, you need some numbers.
Yeah.
Really. Controlling to what degree? Sorry, my phone keeps going off, even though it's on Do Not Disturb. I don't know what's going on there. Anyway, yeah, so I thought it was like an impossible question to answer without some information.
Inflation can be so dangerous. I think that unemployment is at least a little bit more in the hands of the people. I think you can personally do a little bit more about it with inflation. Do due to no fault of your own, all of a sudden your money is worth nothing. It's I don't know.
Yeah, I had a chat with an economist on Sunday afternoon. I'm trying to understand economics a little bit more because there's some aspects that I'm a bit vague about. So I had a chat with someone I know who's an economist for the Scottish Government, lectures a bit at Edinburgh University. And part of what we're talking about is just what is money now? And generally, no one really knows. No one really understands what money even is anymore. And the way that banks make it out of nothing is quite perplexing, and I think quite concerning.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of uncertainties there. But right, let's move on. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation. Because corporations cannot be trusted to voluntarily protect the environment, they require regulation.
I mildly agree. Yes.
Yeah, I may even say strongly agree. Yeah, it's one of those questions where surely that's a no-brainer, as they say.
The thing is, I completely agree, but to what extent? I don't want the economy to be crippled by at the moment often made up environmental rules, because a lot of the stuff that we are doing in regards to environmentalism now is actually just virtue signaling and doesn't really help the environment at all. So
what's your climate change take? So you're slightly skeptical, very skeptical?
I'm very skeptical of the data and the research because it's only pushed in one direction. I'm not saying that climate change doesn't happen, and I'm absolutely certain that humans have an input on that, but I can't trust the science behind it because the science is paid from certain organizations. I want neutrality. And unfortunately, we don't have that. So,
yeah,
very skeptical.
My take is I don't like dismiss the whole thing. Basically, I feel I'm not qualified to judge the case for climate change, but I do think the Earth's climate system is so complicated that I'm not sure how good they are at predicting, because the predictions through recent decades have been a bit all over the place. So I doubt how competent they are at making these predictions. But there's some other things as well. Like I say, I think the academic establishment can be very uniform, and it gets to the point where if you're a climate scientist who doesn't buy the sort of catastrophe model, then you're actually not a climate scientist, because you don't get the job. You can't work in a university with that view. I mean, there's just some other things. I think it always seems to be like we've got 10 years to do something about it. So as a political campaigning, that's the ideal amount of time, isn't it? If you've got 1 year, then I'll forget it. I mean, no one can do anything about that, can they? I mean, we're doomed. If you've got 30 years, that's not so motivating. But 10 years, that's like saying you've really got to vote for the right people at the next election. Otherwise, we've had it. So that just seems a bit convenient to me sometimes. And there's other things as well that make me just wonder about it a little bit.
The problem is that environmentalists intentionally lie about certain issues because they are pressing issues. And I do believe that they are pressing issues. But if a person lies to my face to get me to do something, I'm going to walk the other way, unfortunately. I don't believe, I don't trust liars. And if you can't be honest with me, I will not support you. Very simple.
The other thing I think with the climate change issue, I mean, what we're doing in Scotland is like at the cutting edge of the world scene, isn't it? Or in the UK, we're really at the forefront of tackling carbon emissions. And if you look at China and India, various places in the world, so if the situation was as critical as people are saying, I think there should be a lot more pessimism. People should be saying, look, we're not going to turn this round. No matter what we do, we're not going to turn it around. So we need serious planning of how we're going to cope with this. And I don't really hear that. It's all about what can we do to avert it. So I don't know. It doesn't quite add up.
I give you a good example from Germany, because Germany, they pretend to be very environmental as well. And in some regards, we are. I would say the German people are actually quite environmentally aware. But in regards to the government, 30 years ago, we started to dismantle all the nuclear power plants, and we got rid of nuclear power because it's oh so dangerous and it's oh so bad. And now Germany buys electricity from France because they have nuclear power plants, because otherwise Germany would not meet the climate change promises that they made. So the whole thing is complete nonsense. And now a lot of environmentalists say that nuclear power is actually amongst the cleanest.
Yeah. Yeah, I would. This is not a family party policy, but personally, I think nuclear power seems a good option. Anyway, the next question. Now, for this question, you need to try and put out of your mind. I think it's actually a quotation from Karl Marx, or
okay,
certainly another communist. But again, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is a fundamentally good idea. From each according to his ability, to each according to his need, is fundamentally a good idea.
I will answer based on the fact that it's from Marx, and yeah, it is from Marx. I strongly disagree. Simply because.
How about if it wasn't from there? Forget the background.
I would agree. I would agree. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I did, I agree. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
It's from a Christian point of view, I would agree. But if that means that you take stuff away from others, that you steal and give it other people, I would disagree. I'm very happy to give something from myself to help others. But if it's being taken away from me, not a huge fan of it.
Right.
That's where many people don't understand the difference between communism and being a Christian. Christianity means you give something freely, and communism means you steal from people and give it to others.
Yeah, I would say when I read from each according to his ability, it sounded a bit like, we're taking everything you can afford. But it doesn't necessarily mean that. I mean, it could just mean tax wealthier people in order to provide for people in genuine need, which is an uncontroversial statement, isn't it, at the end of the day? So, right, let's move on. The freer the market, the freer the people. The freer the market, the freer the people.
Slightly disagree.
Okay, how's that?
I think that if the market is too free, then some corporations, and we're seeing that right now, become too powerful, and these corporations actually start to enslave people. I'm just thinking about social media and big tech corporations. They're enslaving people right now. So I would have to disagree with that. There always needs to be checks and balances. And if the organizations, the corporations don't have checks and balances, then they're going to be the new government. That's what's happening at the moment, I would say. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Again, I would say that's like a case-by-case thing. Free markets as a means of generating wealth, great. But there are issues that can be dangers as well. Right, what's next? This is a funny one. It's a sad reflection on our society that something as basic as drinking water is now a bottled, branded consumer product.
Nonsense.
Yeah, I just thought.
Sorry, but I only drink from the tap. I don't have to buy my water. Nonsense.
Yeah, I just think it's a bit odd. I do find it odd that bottled water has become a thing, but I bought it myself. It's just convenient. You want water, you're in a shop, so you buy the So don't get that one at all. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold. Land shouldn't be a commodity to be bought and sold.
I disagree. Because I'm very glad that I own my land. I'm but since I own my land, I'm a little bit annoyed that I can't do certain things on my land. So I want more rights to my land, not less rights to my land.
That's a pretty extreme view, saying that no one should be owning land, isn't it? So that must have,
well, it's
right on the left of the spectrum.
It's a communist view, yeah, definitely.
Right, we're not going to get remotely through this. I think we're still on page 1, by the way. It's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society. It's regrettable that many personal fortunes are made by people who simply manipulate money and contribute nothing to their society.
It's sad, but yeah, so what? I'm okay. Doesn't bother me. And I'm pretty sure they spent their money on something, so they will still contribute in some ways.
I was thinking about this. So if you're a trader on the futures market, I mean, are you performing some useful function in a society? I think probably you are, because the businesses want there to be a futures market. That helps them in their business.
Yeah.
And so if you're trading on a futures market, you're helping that market to exist, if you like, which thereby helps the businesses. I mean, there probably are, like if you look at some of the sort of financial things that have been done, I don't see how they're really helping anyone. But yeah, it's not something that's top of my priorities to do anything about. I mean, if there's ways of making money out of these things and people find them, then I'm not sure there's anything we could do about that. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade. Protectionism is sometimes necessary in trade.
How is protectionism defined?
Protecting your markets from foreign competition. So preventing imports, basically, or putting tariffs on them.
I strongly agree.
Okay. What about the argument that ultimately weakens your economy?
I'm just not a huge fan of globalism. It might weaken the economy. It's always about balance. But I do think that local produce needs to be stronger on the market. I mean, here in Scotland, we import sheep meat from New Zealand because lamb from New Zealand because it's cheaper. It makes absolutely no sense. So I really did like Donald Trump's America First strategy. I think every country should look at their needs first, and then they should work together.
Yeah, the other things like agriculture. I mean, Britain can't feed itself. Which I find, I mean, look at the satellite image and the place is green, but Britain can't feed its population. I don't know if Scotland's in the same boat. I think for a nation, it should look to, it's maybe not foreseeable in the immediate future, but you might end up in a situation where you need to be self-sufficient for whatever reason. And I think getting yourself into the situation where you're too reliant, your gas is coming from Russia, your food's coming from America or whatever. I mean, these supply chains can break down, and then you're in a sticky situation. So I think some degree of self-sufficiency is good. Right, these questions are a bit boring. Let's move on a bit because we're not going to get to the end. Right, I need to put an answer in them, or it won't let me go to the next page. Right, let me put some random answers in.
By the way, somebody in the comment section said that he is really thinking about voting for the Scottish Family Party in the next election. Yes, please do. It's the right thing to do.
Be your guest. Okay. How about this one? All authority should be questioned.
Yes, I strongly agree.
Yeah, when I thought question like in an intellectual sense, not in the being a barrack room lawyer and refusing to accept authority in every situation, but in terms of taking a critical stance towards it. Then yeah, I agree with that.
I was 3 years in the military, and after 3 weeks, my lieutenant asked me if I wanted to become a trainer in the military. And the reason why he did that was because I constructively questioned the authority. When I didn't understand why certain things were done, I asked, they explained, and I said, oh, I think it would be better like this. And because of that, they chose me as a trainer. But it needs to be constructive, the criticism.
Yeah. Right, here's a good question. What do you think about the cut in foreign aid? We've seen that the UK government saying it's going to reduce it.
Yeah. I strongly support that. I think that supporting other countries too much actually enslaves them. I think that we should stay out of other countries as much as we can, but at the same time, we shouldn't drain their resources. So, for example, if we fish their oceans empty, and we shouldn't do that. They should have access to their own food and stuff like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think what I'd say to this, I think cutting foreign aid could be valid. A lot of people, that their view doesn't go any further than it's a nice thing to help people who are less well off. So it's a good thing to do. There's a big question mark about whether foreign aid actually works, whether it actually helps countries. And that is a genuine question. I think a lot of people don't believe that. They think it's just an excuse. But it is a genuine issue about whether it helps. But some of the issues with it as well, what would really help a lot of poorer countries would be free trade. So there's some countries where we put huge tariffs on that prevents them developing industry or food processing or whatever, so that all they can trade in is raw materials that have very volatile prices. So it makes it difficult for them to develop. So it's a lot of the countries that they would be helped more by free trade, open trade, rather than foreign aid. The thing with foreign aid is some of it, quite a bit of it, gets spent on nonsense. It gets spent on very expensive British standard salaries, and then at the other end, it gets spent on feminist dance collectives and whatever. There's a whole range of things that are funded. There's sort of things that we think here are a waste of money. They're doing the same things in other countries. So I think a rethink on that front could be good.
And bipedal species, he just wrote, when you poach all their talent and take it out of the country. That's exactly right. I think this point system that only people with certain qualifications should be allowed to work in the UK, for example, that just means that we take their best and leave them with nothing, where I think that the best of certain countries should stay in their countries and build up their countries.
Yeah. I mean, I heard a while ago, it sounded unbelievable, but it was from a credible source, that there were more Malawian health workers in Birmingham than there were in Malawi. And yet, when they're in Birmingham, people talk about, what's the term they use? Is it there's some phrase in any case that celebrated the fact that the NHS employed people from all around the world. But you imagine you're in a poor country, you spend some of your resources on training nurses and doctors. You can barely afford it, but you get a few trained and you want to get them out in the country. But then they disappear to Britain to make an absolute fortune. And that's celebrated as a really wonderful thing. And something's gone far wrong there, like you were saying. The other issue I think with there is why haven't we got enough doctors ourselves? But why don't we train enough?
And I live so far away. I live in the highest, on the highest top of Scotland, and we haven't had a GP for the last 4 years. We only have locums, and the locums are ridiculously expensive. What I would do is, I would say, if you get trained as a doctor in the UK or in Scotland, the first year you have to work somewhere as a GP, and we're gonna send you there. And then you can do whatever you want to. It's absolutely incomprehensible that a village like Durness, that we can't have a GP. And I talked to some of the locums. What they earn is ridiculous, absolutely insane.
Well, doctors in Britain are the second highest paid in the world.
No way. And
Yeah,
they're so bad, but they're so bad.
I wouldn't say that, but I think it's a monopoly of the NHS, like a monopoly, so there's no competition.
Yeah.
So the BMA is like the National Union of Doctors. It's a very effective trade union. So over the years, they've pushed wages up and up and up. So yeah, they're the second highest paid in the world, which is why, well, partly why a lot of people from other countries are very keen to come and work here in the NHS as doctors. But anyway, let's move on from that one. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
I have to think about it. You can talk about it.
Well, I assume what they mean is the punishment should be the same as the crime. That's all I could think it means. But
I slightly agree. No, I start to agree with that.
But not mirroring the crime, though.
I had to start questioning certain things because in Germany, the legal system does not work anymore. The legal system in Germany, or the punishment in Germany, works for Germans. If I steal something in a shop and the police wags its finger, then I feel horrible for the next year. But we really do have a lot of problems in Germany with non-German people that commit crimes like theft. And when somebody wags a finger at them, they just go back to doing the same thing. So unfortunately, our German legal system doesn't work anymore with the influx of people that are coming in. And for them, Sharia law worked, and we don't have that. And because of that, we can't punish them. I know it's a very tricky thing, but sometimes I think that a whack on the hand might help more than a fine that they can't pay anyways.
I think with if people come from countries where the legal system's been extremely severe, then probably, most Western countries, it would seem a bit of a joke. It would seem quite indulgent. I mean, I think we've all got an inbuilt sense of justice. So when a serious crime is committed and we hear what the punishment is, there's something in us that just balances that up, and we know if that seems right or not. I would say generally, when I hear about the sentence that's been given for a crime, I generally think, "What is that? Is that all?" Also knowing that they're probably only going to serve half of it in any case. I wouldn't want to go to any sort of physical punishment, though.
I can give you an example. So, for example, if somebody throws out a can of Coke out of his car window, I want them to pick up trash on the road. I really like it when the punishment is actually connected to what people did, so that there is a learning effect. Because I think that a lot of our justice system is disconnected from the crimes.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's the ideal. Quite difficult to implement.
That's true.
Quick question here from Sarah. Where does Scottish Family Party stand on the idea of deterrence? I mean, very in the justice system, punishments are there for three reasons. The primary one is desert. People who do things wrong, break the law, whatever, deserve to be punished. So that's the main reason, is this justice. Deterrence is also a factor. Part of the reason you have laws and punishments is to have an input into the thinking process of other people who might be considering similar actions. So deterrence is an important aspect. And the last aspect, rehabilitation as well. So if you can turn someone onto a better path, then obviously that's a really good thing to do. But if you don't start off with the idea of desert and justice, then the whole thing gets very confused and you end up in a muddle, which is what's happening in Scotland big time. Because they think the idea that you deserve punishment, well, they think that's very old-fashioned. Even deterrence they're not too keen on. They think it's all about rehabilitation. And if you think it's all about rehabilitation, things start getting very strange. Like, I mean, you can try and rehabilitate someone before they've committed the crime, etc. So yeah, deterrence, very definitely. Right, how about this? Next one. taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis. Taxpayers should not be expected to prop up any theatres or museums that cannot survive on a commercial basis.
I disagree, especially in regards to theaters, because I think culture, it's our duty to protect culture. In regards to theaters, I also agree that it should be supported, but it should have cultural value.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, for example, museums are fantastic. I think they're a great resource, and it is, like you say, it's part of maintaining the culture within a nation as well. So I think taxpayers' money going to those is great. What shouldn't happen there is that they become like political propaganda centres. We should remember the Glasgow Transport Museum. What's it called now? Riverside Museum. I used to have an exhibit, have various cars and trains and whatever, and they also had a CND peace protest van.
Okay.
But that's obviously really significant in the history of transport, isn't it? And there were other things as well. You'd walk around, you think, oh yeah, the council's got their oar in there, and the unionists.
But I think if theaters and museums are taxpayer funded, I think then it should be free to be used by schools, for example, or people that might not be able to afford it.
Yeah. Okay, this is a strange one. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory. Schools should not make classroom attendance compulsory.
No, it should definitely be compulsory, but I'm moving away from school, to be honest. I think once I have children, I would prefer to homeschool my children because I don't trust schools anymore.
Yeah, but I think there's so many people looking at home education now, just hearing from one person after another. And it's got huge challenges, but people do make amazing sacrifices and seem to do a great job with it. So I think there's a lot to be said for it.
Last year I had a couple coming into my gallery, and they had two girls, and they were by far the smartest children that I've ever met. And they were both homeschooled, and they were so well behaved. They were so well integrated in society. I was absolutely shocked. Obviously, that doesn't mean that that's going to be the case for all children, but it was a very good example.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. Yeah, I would agree. I didn't think about that. Yeah, obviously, if they're teaching something that's like way out indoctrination, then yes, I would hope parents and pupils could opt out of it. Very definitely.
By the way, I want teachers to be respected again. So I think teachers have to be respectable again, and teachers need to be respected again. The same goes for the police and for. I don't mind these old days where certain people in society were respected by the community, but for them to be respected, they have to act respectfully, and that's missing at the moment, I think.
How do you mean?
I think, for example, that teachers are not doing the best job. The police is not doing the best job they can. They're just doing a job. In the past, I think it was more a calling for many people. But
I'm saying teaching, a large proportion of teachers have got very much a sort of service attitude to it. They would see it as a vocation, and they've got quite noble ends in view. I think the philosophy of education in Scotland undermines their efforts.
I agree.
I think in a school, the ideal situation in a school is you should be able to take anyone off the street, put them in front of a class, and tell them what the system is in the school, that this is how you deal with any misbehavior. And it should be fine. They should be able to teach the class that if anyone's out of line, they can just follow that procedure. And the school systems enable there to be good order, and it's fine. But I think it's a long, long way away from that in every school. I would say the teachers are really feeling that they've got to, perform some miracle almost to persuade, to cajole, to bribe whatever the pupils into behaving, because they haven't really got any other tools at their disposal. which makes teaching very, very stressful for a lot of teachers and very frustrating.
And the teachers and schools have in some areas very little support from the parents. And to be honest, I think I would be probably one of the most obstructive parents possible. I think I would be in school every single day and tell the teachers to stop indoctrinating my children.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. How about this one? It's natural for children to keep some secrets from their parents.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, what's that got to do with where you're on the political spectrum? Okay, right. Next one. Possessing marijuana for personal use should not be a criminal offense.
I agree.
So just marijuana?
I think the most dangerous drug might actually be alcohol, and that's legal. I think what we need is not banning stuff, because people are taking it anyways. What we need is a lot more support and telling people about the dangers of alcohol, of different drugs, and helping them not to become addicts. I think I don't know how much punishment really helps in that regard.
I would say with alcohol, I mean, the problems caused by alcohol in Scotland are catastrophic. I mean, it's just
Absolutely.
The statistics are horrific. But the reason, prohibition wouldn't work, because if you have a law that's too far out of sync with people's expectation, people's current lifestyle, basically it doesn't work. So there isn't the option with alcohol of saying, right, we're going to ban it, then we're going to solve all these problems, because it wouldn't work. It's too far away from the attitude in society. I would say with cannabis, what's happened is we've sort of almost got to the same point, but because the law hasn't been enforced over years and years and years. I mean, I would rather my sons grew up in a world where cannabis was just not available. It was the law enforcement was so effective that it was just not available. Yeah. But I think I've probably said before, when I go for a run round in Edinburgh a couple of times a week, suburbs, parks, wherever, all times of the day and night,
everywhere.
And in the evening, and a couple of times normally, even going like just through the bungalow jungle, you'll smell cannabis somewhere. So the police basically don't make any effort to deal with it. And I would say the best solution is for law enforcement to genuinely deal with the issue, because for some people, they may choose to take the risk, but when they choose to take the risk, I end up picking up the tab for it with their rehabilitation and paying their unemployment benefit and whatever. And I'm not happy with people making that choice, deciding to exploit my charitable nature through the tax system. So yeah. I don't think people should be able to make that choice. But at the moment, I think it's just not enforced, and it's a major problem in Scotland. And the drift is all towards the harm reduction. We've got to give up on stopping people taking it. We've just got to try and pick up the pieces.
The problem is, when you legalize it, then you send out a message that it's not dangerous, and it's incredibly dangerous. Drugs are probably my biggest fear in regards to children. When I have children, that would be my biggest fear, that they start taking drugs, because it's something that is so hard to fight against. When you look at, I've seen so many cases where people started taking drugs and then they just go down a rabbit hole. I would actually go as far, if my child would become a real addict, I think I would kidnap my child and take my child somewhere away from the drugs and say, okay, you're not leaving this place before you're clean.
Yeah.
Sounds very harsh, but I think as a parent, you have the responsibility to protect your child. And if your child is going down this road and is likely to die one day of it, you have to do what you got to do.
Yeah, I clicked on that one by mistake, but it's come up in any case. How old is Philip? Is that a secret?
No, I'm going to be 43 in a couple of weeks.
All right. Well, let us know. We'll,
so if the,
happy birthday.
If there are some single women out there that would like to have a family with a good person with a weird past, I'm here.
Yeah, live stream and dating agency rolled
Exactly.
into one.
Thank you very much. Well, it's called
Right.
the Scottish Family Party, so
Absolutely. Right, time has flown by. We've got about 30% through it, but that was interesting. Thanks to everyone for chipping in. We appreciated the comments as well. Actually got round to picking a few more of them out this time. So thanks for watching, and see you next week. Thanks, Phil.